2 and 3. Got it. Anything can help you with anything, getting this set up?
If you just want to help me with just setting up all of this,
Okay.
that would be huge. Just gotta get everything else on here. Here as we continue to keep an eye on the blizzard of 2026, I'm meteorologist Anthony Carpino.
Steve Glazier here alongside Anthony. Here we go, my friends. Anthony, the blizzard warning officially in effect all the way through Monday night. So we've got a long way to go. This storm system is just getting going.
It is. And, you know, at first this was just along the Connecticut shoreline for that blizzard warning. Now it has been expanded, Steve, not only for the shoreline, but the entire state. So everybody expecting very breezy conditions for us. And some good amount of snow to go along with it.
I think that's the biggest takeaway here with this storm system. That one that you'll notice the most, perhaps, is the wind. It's a big driver of our weather. It's, of course, the driver of the blizzard warnings, too. Of course, we're focusing a lot on the snow drifts, which will make travel near impossible for some parts of the state. Tomorrow morning is when the worst of it is. But I think the wind is really the big takeaway. These wind gusts could reach 40 to as high as 60 miles an hour. With the last storm that we had last month in late January, you know, the winds were probably between perhaps 15, 20, 25 miles an hour. We are doubling that kind of wind magnitude, at least doubling that. And that creates a lot of issues. So here's the storm system. It is now officially a storm that is moving offshore, oceanic storm, and it's intensifying as it taps into cold air over land and relatively warmer water temperatures out over the Atlantic basin. And this is quite remarkable. We've got millions of folks impacted here up and down the I-95 to Route 1 corridors, from Delaware to Maryland and to Virginia Beach, all the way up here into the New England area. And then folks to our north, our friends up into Boston, Worcester, into northern New England. Not much happening at the moment, but yeah, that is going to change because of these snow bands that will move in. If you see any of these darker blue colors, those are the heavier amounts of snow, and those bands of snow will probably only form more and get going more as we go through tonight as the storm intensifies. So the deeper blue, the heavier snow. It's taken a little while to get going in northern Connecticut based on some of the drier air there and distance from the storm itself. Where we've been getting a lot of the snow, though, here is into southern Connecticut, where we're seeing more of that accumulation already start to pile up through the Connecticut shoreline, the I-95 corridor, and now snowing all across the state. So I always love to show you what it looks like. This is our New Haven camera, and it's going to be interesting to watch how this unfolds. You can already see some of that snow and ice piling up and accumulating on the left-hand side of this camera lens. Wet conditions, too. This also speaks to the type of snow with this event. This is not going to be as fluffy and dry of a snow as what we had last month. This is going to be a pastier, stickier snow. It's a heavier snow, too. There's a lot more of kind of a water content and equivalent with this one. Because if you think about it, it's taking all that moisture from the Atlantic basin and just dumping it here in the mid-Atlantic states and overland into New England. So you can just see how wet the conditions are as we use the little windshield wiper. And the funny thing about that is this is ice on the right-hand side of that windshield wiper, so that's just accumulating on the lens. And then Bradley International Airport. This camera notoriously, probably because this is zoomed way in toward the airport terminal, so it tends to look probably a little bit more intense in terms of visibility and precipitation intensity because you're zoomed way in. But you can see some of the crews trying to keep the runway clear for now in terms of arrivals and departures. So that's kind of where we sit. Anthony and I are going to be going kind of back and forth with this over the next couple of hours. And we are streaming on social media, too. Find us on our pages. That way you can ask questions, be interactive with us. We love that. Yep. Anthony, you know, from your perspective, you said this is your first time
This is my first
tracking a blizzard. So
I'm excited.
I guess congratulations. I'm not sure if I should say that.
Well, my last job, I was down in Augusta, Georgia, and we definitely get any blizzards there. You know, blizzard for them was having, you know, an inch of snow or two, and that was some pretty interesting conditions there. We got the Facebook, we got all the feeds pulled up right in front of me here, so we'll be able to answer some of the questions that you guys have. I know the feeds are kind of going back and forth a little bit, so if you're watching on our Facebook pages, ask a question there, but make sure to join us on the NBC Connecticut streaming channel as well as our YouTube pages. So like Steve mentioned, you can see how this system is now starting to work its way out into the Atlantic, and we are starting to see some of those heavier snow bands. Well, they're getting closer to the state. One of the things that Steve mentioned was how it's northern Connecticut that's now just starting to see that snow work its way into that area. But look at the darker shading there along portions of the shoreline. So definitely starting to see some more of those heavier snow showers there in southern areas of the state. So you go to Ansonia, you go up Route 8 a little bit closer to Waterbury, Naugatuck, seeing some of that snow as well. Let's see if I can stop this at the latest frame here. And I want to pull up what we usually end up using. Let's see if I can switch it. This might be the wrong one. To our regular style of radar. This is where we end up seeing, we'll just keep it here. Let's zoom it back out a little bit. But you can definitely see, Steve, a lot of those heavier bands further off to the south, all of this kind of pinwheeling as we go through tonight, and it's really starting to intensify there. So let me know if you guys have any questions about the forecast here. Nick says, any changes for the forecast for South Windsor? So no changes there. We're still talking about blizzard-like conditions across Connecticut as we head into the overnight period. The peak of this storm, where we're going to end up seeing the most impacts, will be in the overnight period. So as we go to sleep tonight, those impacts likely between about 3 a.m., but lasting all the way through what would be our morning commute and even through about 10 o'clock in the morning there. So still expecting some very gusty conditions for us. And, well, we're still expecting anywhere from 10 to 20 inches of snow. So let's go through future radar here in satellite, where we do end up seeing a lot of that snow continue for us moving through this overnight period. So there you go. We continue the clock going past 10 p.m. and there's still bands. Take a look at the future radar here. You can see how, well, we have areas of lighter blue, darker blue, and that keeps going back and forth. Those are those snow bands that we're going to keep a close eye on as we head through that overnight period. So look at this. By 3 a.m., look how much dark blue is covering Connecticut. It's almost covering the entire state. So everyone expecting to see that moderate snow band and heavy snow band moving through that overnight period. It's not until we get to 10 o'clock in the morning where we finally start to see things break apart a little bit more. That's not to say the snow is done. We're still going to be dealing with snow showers moving through Monday afternoon, but it's not as widespread. And then by Monday night, well, we're finally starting to clear everything out. So here's a look at that forecast total for you, about 10 to 20 inches across the board here, across Connecticut. Now, I will say, we'll be keeping an eye on those heavy snow bands. It's those snow bands that will end up pushing your snow totals closer to that 20-inch mark, and maybe in an isolated location or two, perhaps exceeding that. I don't think by a whole lot, but wouldn't be surprised if we get a couple of 21 or 23-inch reports. I don't think it's widespread. I think it's for a couple of towns that just sees that significant snow band when it starts to set up shop there a little bit. Let me see if I can get to anybody else's question. So where do you believe the heaviest bands will set up? So this is a very difficult question to answer because this is just going to form. Let me see if I can dial it back here. Looking at radar here, a little bit wider perspective. So we can see, I'll try to draw this here. It might be hard for you guys to see, but we can draw like a little line here, a little line here. That's where we can see the bands as they play out. But where we expect them to form, well, we have to keep an eye on where they are right now and then kind of going forward. So it's very hard to use a forecast model to predict where they go. We have to see them on radar and then track as they move. And that's where we can kind of pinpoint kind of more in the moment as to who is end up seeing the heaviest of that snow there. Let's see, any other questions on here too? Amanda has a question. Is the wind and power outages more of a concern than the amount of snow expected? Steve, I don't know if you want to jump in here too. I'll answer that first. I'm kind of leaning more on the side of the wind, honestly, just because that wind can move the snow around, and the wind is going to be the issue when it comes down to power outages, Steve.
I think so too, Anthony. I think the wind, because the storm's coming so close to us and it's deepening so much that, if we get some power outages, of course, it's going to be tough to renew and fix those outages because it'll continue to be windy tomorrow. And you think of these big trucks or whatever it takes to get into the lines and outages and all the snow on top of that. So I think outages is something that is more of a concern with this one, especially compared to the last storm that we had, those strong wind gusts that we're seeing. So that's going to be something that we have to plan and prepare for, making sure that anything essential that you need is charged up. Perhaps you have an alternative source of heat if you do have a generator running that outside, at least outside your property with enough clearance so no exhaust or fumes are harming you. And then if not, maybe an alternative friends or family's location in case you have to do any chores or anything like that. So that's going to be one. And the wind is going to be strongest tomorrow morning through probably from about 4 a.m. tonight up until about noon tomorrow, noon or 1. So a big chunk of tomorrow morning. And that's really what's going to drive the blizzard conditions. That's really driven by the strong winds. So blizzard also is based on visibility because the two kind of go hand in hand with the wind whipping up the snow. It reduces the visibility. And the key number for a whiteout, if you will, is 1/4 mile. So we're seeing that actually at the Waterbury Airport location, 1/4 mile visibility. This is current. We're at 3/4 in Stonington, 1 Groton, Chester. So you can see what part of the state, especially the southern half of the state, is experiencing the toughest of the travel conditions right now, if anybody is out. Whereas Bradley Airport is still reporting 7-mile visibility, which generally is on the clear side. So look at the expanse of this weather system, though. I mean, it's huge. You have all of Jersey under the blizzard warning, and the blizzard warning is going to New Hampshire all the way down to Maryland and Delaware. So it's a big storm that we're seeing. The winds are just getting going. Again, the windiest time is going to be tomorrow morning. The current wind gusts are a little bit higher than this, but the sustained winds are 7 Meriden, 8 miles an hour in Danbury, 12 miles an hour in Hartford, 15 in Willimantic, 14 in New Haven. The gusts are not at the blizzard level yet, so the blizzard not ongoing yet. But as we go through tonight, that's when the winds continue to ramp up. Bridgeport, 28 mile an hour wind gusts, Groton, 23. The wind gusts could be reaching up to 40 to 60 miles an hour. So why so windy? It's a storm, if you've heard the term bombing out, bomb cyclone, that kind of term, that is accurate. It's a storm that rapidly intensifies, and it's just right now emerging off the mid-Atlantic. So these reds indicate kind of the strength of that low. And once it gets to a deeper red color and all the lines get closer together, that's where some of the strongest winds come in. So you can kind of see how this circle right here, that's the center of the low, gets closest to us tomorrow morning and early afternoon. So that's when conditions are going to be windiest. We have drifting snow. You have some issues like that. So feels like temps right now, low 20s. The wind will make it very cold for cleanup during the storm. I was also thinking about, personally, cleanup time, probably doing a few waves. Probably tomorrow afternoon, take a crack at it. And then we'll see. I don't know, Anthony, have you thought about when you're already going to start the snowblower and
the snowblower is that's another sore subject there. I gave it a try today. I gave it a 30% chance of actually working by tomorrow morning. So I think you're exactly right though, Steve. I think if you're going to go out there, you got to do if what you have to do is just to shovel. Yes, out there in waves. So maybe later on tonight, get up early, do another round of it, and then another one by tomorrow afternoon. Steve mentioned those winds, anywhere 40, 50 mile per hour gusts there for peak wind gusts, really moving west of the river there. I think the greatest chance for seeing gusts more than 50 will be eastern Connecticut, but also the I-95 corridor stretching all the way down through Fairfield County as well. I do want to show you just out to our east there for places in Rhode Island and then going out toward eastern Mass. They could have winds potentially gusting over 65 miles per hour. Now, I did see one question on here. I think let's see, where did it go? Is it true, Alex wants to know, is it true that this would be similar to a Category 1 hurricane if this were hurricane season? So there is definitely the potential for Category 1 gusts out on Cape Cod as this system really just tightens up and as we kind of go through that overnight period. So if you want to look at it from a wind perspective, that's definitely a possibility. Not for us in Connecticut, but you got to go out east toward eastern Mass and sections of Cape Cod there. Let's see. John says, I have work tomorrow near Waterbury, need to go to Woodbridge. How is it going to be? Well, John, if you have work tomorrow afternoon, I think you're going to be in much better shape than if you have work in the morning. So I'll walk you through future radar here again. Moving through tonight, we see just periods of heavy snow, the heaviest snow arriving right around 3 a.m. or so, and then continuing all the way through roughly 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. It's after 10 a.m. where we start to break apart the snow a little bit, but we can still have some snow bands moving through Monday afternoon. It may not be for everybody, so we'll slowly start to taper out those snow showers moving past midday, and then by tomorrow night, we're finally done with all of that snow there. Let's see, other questions here. Let's see. Sean says he's at BDL right now. It's not that bad so far. There's more departures left. A little windy out there. So Steve, he was saying how winds at Bradley not too bad. I know you were just showing those current conditions. Also not really seeing that wind right now. My parents actually flew out of Bradley today as well.
Oh wow, they made it.
They were able to get out. They were a little delayed, but they were able to get right out of here. But yeah, those winds are just going to be, I think, the big story for us.
Yes.
In addition to the snow, I mean, I don't want to discount 10 to 20 inches of snow, but I really think that wind could be a problem for us. And also talking about scattered power outages to kind of go along with it.
I think so. I think that we will have scattered power outages. I know that's something that we have to plan for. And we will be getting you through the storm here the best we can at NBC Connecticut. Hey, let's take a couple of live pictures. First in Mystic, Connecticut, the low visibility. You can see the snowfall accumulating, pretty icy looking picture. And we have some live pictures as well from Meriden, Connecticut. If we can take those, showing the highway road conditions. Those are getting snowier. Someone's got their hazard lights down there on the left-hand side as they go along. A couple of tire marks that are visible on the right-hand side of the screen, so it looks like if the roads are passed with enough vehicles that you're almost finding your own groove in there. But it's good to see no impacts here and not a lot of folks out on the roadway. There's a decent amount, a handful of vehicles here and there, but there is a big commercial vehicle travel ban across Connecticut. The governor has issued a state of emergency, which enables and frees up resources to react and go to any issues with the state. I know state of emergency can kind of be a scary thought, but it's just kind of literally a state that you're in to free up resources to go wherever those will be. So those conditions will continue deteriorating. Here's a live look in Litchfield on our Litchfield camera. This is on the northern side of the snow event, so the heaviest of the snow rates. And also the bands of snow quite haven't filled in just yet. So it's not too bad. You see a couple of vehicles navigating, but definitely those roads are becoming snow covered, and that's when conditions get really on the dicey side. The feels like temperature is about 22 to 25. The temperatures are generally here all below freezing, so anything that's falling is sticking out there. Live look at our Storm Tracker Doppler radar. Just did hear from the National Weather Service office in New York. So if you ever see this little wedge here, it's missing data. The radar down on Long Island hitting, I believe it's a water tower that just kind of gets in the way. But the Weather Service for New York is based down here on Long Island. And they reported 2 inches in 1 hour between 7 and 8 tonight. So just prior to this live show. And that is that deeper blue moving over Long Island Sound now and closer to the coast. So those are those snow rates that really make it tough and toughest to travel, because while plow crews are out, if it's snowing 2 inches an hour, it's almost impossible to keep up with that kind of pace if these trucks are only kind of getting to a road every other hour or so. You're going to be adding up that snow quickly. So that's really when we should be staying off the roads, once those snow rates eclipse 1 inch per hour. And we're seeing the heavier snow bands here into southern Connecticut, Groton, over to Guilford, New Haven, Bridgeport, and everybody's seeing the snow here across the state. The wider view with this weather system is low pressure is intensifying just east of the mid-Atlantic. And what that is doing is throwing up all this moisture into Connecticut. We don't have to worry about freezing rain or sleet. This is going to stay all snow because there's enough cold air parked across the Northeast. And also you can tell that there's enough cold air because the snow is all the way down through Jersey and all the way down to the 95 corridor in D.C., where it was about 50 degrees yesterday, and then now we're getting some snowfall in the nation's capital. So the cold air has come in that will make this all snow. Don't have to worry about any mixing. However, with all snow, then you're able to generate all of the fluff factor out of that. So you're using all the available moisture to then dump as snow, and we will get that range. So the wind gusts. Let's talk about some of the wind gusts that we expect tonight. These gusts before midnight tonight shouldn't cause any issues. So we're not expecting flickers of power, any outages or anything like that through midnight. Now, after midnight, it's a different story, and especially probably just before sunrise tomorrow morning. This is at sunrise or just after at 7:30 in the morning. You see the really strong wind gusts up to about 45, 50, maybe 55 miles an hour. Luckily, that's not constant wind blowing down on us, but occasional gusts. But sometimes those gusts can be the ones that give us the problems when it comes to outages and some minor tree damage too, and that's across eastern Connecticut. Northwest Connecticut, which usually is our jackpot for snow totals and some of the stronger winds, you're just farther from the storm. The low pressure center is off into the northwest Atlantic Ocean, so you're actually kind of on the lower side of things as we look at the wind gust potential. And then the winds stay breezy all day tomorrow, which means that we continue to have the blowing and drifting snow out there and some of the stronger wind gusts that will continue across Connecticut through Monday night. Now, Tuesday mornings when things really improve. Sun returning, wind calming, though we'll be on the chilly side in terms of some colder air that we've been arriving at. Okay, so we've had a couple of remarks about the wide range of the snowfall forecast, which is 10 to 20 inches, which is a big range, but it's one of those snowstorms that we will probably end up getting closer to 10 inches across the northern portion of Connecticut, of the Connecticut River Valley. So let's say Windsor Locks, Enfield, maybe Suffield. So Windsor Locks, you're probably on the closer side to 10 inches with that. For a couple of reasons, you're a little farther from the low pressure center, and there's a little bit of a shadowing effect here into the valley with a little bit of a downsloping wind off the hills, so it dries out the air just a tad. So those are the two reasons. Now you're probably going to be closer to 20 inches to the southeast of Hartford. Hartford Center, probably closer to 10 to 12 inches for this snow event. Last snow event that we had in late January was on the order of 16 to 18 inches of snow. As you look live in Duncan Park, we feel so far away from opening day, which is set for Thursday, April 3rd at Duncan Park. And that just feels like a very, very distant memory. But you can still see the buildings, at least a distant thought. You can still see the buildings, so the visibility has not dropped significantly in the capital city just yet. We are still seeing the snowfall, but not a lot of that heavy snow rate to reach Hartford City proper. But that'll be coming here in the next few hours. I expect now through midnight that those really heavy snow rates arrive. So probably closer to the 10-inch mark from Hartford, where we showed you up to Bradley Airport at Windsor Locks, and then closer to the 20-inch mark here. Southeast Connecticut, closer to the Rhode Island border, closer to the storm system and the low pressure area. Now, it's certainly possible that we get more than 20 inches. That would probably be more likely in extreme southeast Connecticut, so I'd say from Norwich southeast towards Stonington, and maybe into the hill towns into Windham County. Looking live in Mystic, Connecticut, the snow is already starting to accumulate on some of the lenses that we have here in our camera network, where the low pressure area is really starting to get going here across the state. And those, again, conditions will continue to kind of go downhill as we go deeper into tonight and through tomorrow morning. And I do want to give you a live radar update too with this weather system that is moving through. Here it is, our live storm tracker Doppler radar. Snow now falling across the entire state of Connecticut. And as we look at those conditions here, they are getting snowier, especially down here into southern sections of Long Island Sound, southern Connecticut, those deeper blues indicating where we have some of the trouble spots here with regard to those heavy snow bands. So you're looking at areas in New London County to the Rhode Island border. I think this is kind of the one spot that will get this storm system's brutal force the most. I think this is where the biggest impacts will be in towns like, in cities like Norwich, Clinton, Groton, to New London, because you're closer to the storm system, but also so you have the highest wind potential with this too, and the highest snow potential. And this is all moving in off of the water, off of the Sound and off of the Atlantic. So this is all that water just dropping on land. So that's what we have going on across parts of Connecticut. Okay, I want to bring in colleague, storm tracker meteorologist Anthony Carpino. We've been getting a lot of questions, so I want to thank everybody for asking those tonight. I know a lot of people wondering about the wind, the amount of snow. probably when this whole thing winds down to an end.
I have a question for you, though, Steve. So Joe here on YouTube asks, is there the possibility for Thundersnow?
I think so. I was thinking about this earlier today.
Yeah.
I think we can, because there's a lot of lift in the atmosphere. Usually with these strengthening storms that, bombing out, you can get some Thundersnow.
Absolutely. I was looking at the Weather Prediction Center, or Storm Prediction Center, and they actually had outlined along the New England coast that potential for some non-severe thunderstorm activity, so just a regular thunderstorm here or there. In this case, the potential for some Thundersnow there. So could be a possibility. Let's see if anyone else has a question here. Kevin asks, I'm driving to New York, down to the city with, let's see. Someone else asked, is there a full travel ban in Connecticut? Steve, I don't believe there is, but we do have
No, I don't think so.
the commercial vehicle ban in Connecticut. So tractor trailers, things like that, not allowed on the roadways. But you can head to our website for more info on what is closed, what remains open. Let's see. I had one question here from Peter asking, the blizzard of 26, does it have similarities, or can we make any kind of comparisons to Nemo back in 2013? The Nemo had, Nemo, I had about 36 inches of snow from that storm at my house in Coventry. We're not expecting that much snow with this system. We're expecting still a good amount, 10 to 20 inches across the state there. And we're expecting windy conditions to go along with all of this as well. Here's the view outside. How about that in Waterbury, where they're already starting to push away some of that snow on some of the sidewalks there. So it is coming down pretty good there. And it was really interesting because we were looking at some of the other cameras. We were looking at New Haven earlier, and I was looking at this yesterday, and you can actually start to make out some of the grass. Just as all the snow from that last storm finally melted away, well, we have another storm to talk about. Let's walk you through the next several hours at what we can expect. So 8 p.m. there tonight, continuing through tonight, we're going to see those snow bands continue to increase there, right? We're talking about heavier snow on the way for us. That continues moving through the overnight period there. Perhaps a little bit of a lull possible by midnight or so, but then it really fills in by 3 a.m. Monday. That just continues for us moving through Monday morning. Very heavy snow, gusty winds potentially over 50, 60 miles per hour along the Connecticut shoreline and eastern areas of the state. So that will definitely create blizzard conditions there. And then still having that potential for some snow showers Monday afternoon, and then it all tapers away by the time we get past 9 p.m. or so Monday night. So again, 10 to 20 inches across Connecticut here. Everyone expecting 10 to 20, but there could be some spots that see maybe a little bit more based on where those snow bands set up. Now on the other side of the coin for us, if you miss out on some of those snow bands, well, then you could be closer to that 10-inch mark versus on the higher end of that spectrum there for us. So winds, we've been mentioning winds 40 to 50 miles per hour for the parts of the state highlighted there in orange. So more or less if you're west of the river. Now, if you're along the 95 corridor and then stretching up into eastern Connecticut, I think you'll have a greater chance of having winds gusting over 50, so likely between 50, maybe 60 miles per hour. And then if you look out toward Rhode Island and eastern Massachusetts, they could see winds gusting potentially over 65 miles per hour and maybe even over 70 for portions of Cape Cod. So let's go through this hour by hour here. Moving through midnight, we can see winds gusting across the state anywhere from about 30, potentially 40 miles per hour. Not awful, definitely getting breezy out there for sure. But as we move past midnight, this is 3 a.m. Now take a look at where we're seeing those gusts. Eastern Connecticut, everyone gusting over 50 miles per hour. That includes the Connecticut shoreline. You look down toward Bridgeport there, New Haven, 48, 52 miles per hour. Moving past 3 a.m., potential for gusts there at or maybe potentially a few isolated gusts over 60 miles per hour. So yes, very breezy there. Let's talk about impacts as well. Snow removal. when you have to shovel everything, this is going to be a heavy, wet snow, and that is thanks to our temperatures. If you remember the last storm that we got, we ended up seeing temperatures into the teens, very cold air. That made for very fluffy and powdery snow. It was easy to move. You could use the leaf blower and move the snow out of the way. Not this time. This time our temperatures are warmer into the 20s, if not into the lower 30s, and it is a heavy, dense, wet snow for us. So it's going to be a little bit of a pain if you wait till the end of the storm to shovel everything. That is going to take a long time, and that's probably going to stress your back out a little bit there too. Wind gusts, that is definitely going to be a very big impact for us, as well as kind of hand in hand there. Higher wind gusts, snow, that's going to come with low visibility. But I did bump up the power outage risk from medium to high. I think especially eastern Connecticut, where we end up seeing some of the strongest wind gusts, that's where we could have that potential for some power outages there. And our temperatures, Steve, tonight really don't fall all that much. In fact, I feel like these temperatures into the 20s here are really for tomorrow afternoon versus going through, you know, that overnight period. I think our low temperatures might kind of be flipped around a little bit.
Probably, yeah, they'll probably be pretty stationary. You know, the wind keeps everything mixed. I always kind of equate it like a salad dressing. You know, if you shake it up, everything's distributed. That's like the wind, it keeps the air mixed. Anthony, we did get some questions because I'm also streaming this here on YouTube, so I can kind of watch these questions. How late are you guys working? Anthony is going until 3 a.m., right?
Oh, yeah. I was just say, why not? I'm not missing out on the fun here.
Yeah.
I'm joining Bob and Ryan starting at 4 a.m.
Anthony will leave here at midnight, and he'll be watching the weather on his, I bet, on his phone probably until 2 or 3 in the morning. That's my guess for Anthony. Shout out to Josh, who I went to high school with. He's watching tonight, so big thanks, Josh. A lot of questions also about driving. I got one from George. He wants to go to and has to go pick up his daughter tonight in New Haven at 11:30, and I said, you know, you can make it, but please drive safely if you have to travel. You just want to make sure you got good enough tires. You have the winter kit inside, so that's things like hand warmers, an extra blanket, maybe some kitty litter, something to get you some traction in case you get stuck, shovel, that kind of thing, some extra food and water and that sort of deal. Making sure maybe you have some contacts. If you have AAA, you have the number nearby in case something happens. Letting someone know where you're going, when you'll be there, when you get back. Those kind of things, because the conditions really get quite intense. So I want to take you on the radar update, just a couple things I'm seeing when we zoom things out and we loop this. So this is just based on the Upton radar, so the Long Island radar here, and that's why you kind of see it shave off into the circle. It can see about 200 miles from the radar site, and then it kind of loses its ability to see. So it's only a certain distance, but that covers us easily here. And now this is not rain, but if we just look at the precipitation intensity. So again, this is intensity. It's still snowing, but it's a kind of another way to look at it. You see these yellows right here? This is northern tip of Long Island. Here's coastal Connecticut right here, these yellows. That's some really intense snow. So this is probably that snowfall rate of 1 to maybe 2 inches per hour. Let me put it in motion for you to show you that this is moving toward Clinton, 95, lower sections of Route 9 to Old Saybrook, and that's just moving in. So that's the lower visibility. Probably not the really strong wind gusts with that yet, but it's more so probably just really heavy snow and really low visibility. And of course, that's then going to boost your totals. So let's say it's 835 right now. By the time we get to 935, you can have an extra inch and a half outside your door and on the roadways too. So that same band actually goes all the way over the Sound, over to Branford, New Haven, Milford, those deeper greens to yellows. This is snow, but it's just kind of looking at the raw product without the precipitation depiction. And that's really heavy snowfall there. So here we go. These bands really starting to move in. And again, taking the same mode of the radar, but just zooming out to show you this. This is an amazing part of the water cycle. I mean, this you think back to grade school, maybe 3rd grade or something, evaporation, condensation, and boom, rain or snow. So this is just getting released from the atmosphere. You can see it coming up from the Atlantic Ocean, and it's almost like it's kind of training. It's just forming right here. So you see the back edge, but it never moves. The back edge is not moving toward us. It's just forming right there and moving up on in. So that
we can end up getting a lot of those heavier snow totals too.
Yes.
When you see that training starting to form south of Long Island, that eventually moves into Connecticut.
all here.
And if it doesn't stop, well, that's where we can really see the snow pile up a little bit. I have one question here from YouTube. It's from @Relaxation Connection. Is this a nor'easter, a blizzard, or a bombogenesis? So that's a good question there. So this is a nor'easter. Now, you'll get nor'easters, but you may not have blizzard conditions with them. So this storm is actually a combination of all three. So with bombogenesis, you need that storm to intensify pretty rapidly. The pressure on it needs to fall a certain amount within a 24-hour period. So that's a check mark there. We got that one. For a blizzard, we need to have winds over 35 miles per hour. We need to have reduced visibility, blowing snow. We are expecting that. And this is, of course, a classic textbook nor'easter. So this one actually checks all three boxes. So I thought that was pretty interesting there. Peter Birch 2135 is asking, I live in Southbury, Connecticut, elevation approximately 500 feet. How is that going to affect our snow level there? Steve, we're going to be talking about, temperature-wise, everyone is going to be seeing kind of snow there across the board. So we're still expecting 10, 20 inches of snow at times, by the time all of this is, said and done for us. Again, that's a look at our temperatures as we go through tonight. Heavy snow, of course, that wind is going to be on the way for us as well. Let's see if I can back this up a little bit here, talking about some of those impacts that we can expect. So high, gusty winds, that is for sure what we're going to be talking about there. But Peter, to go back to your question, this isn't going to be so much of an elevation-dependent storm for us because our temperatures are all expected to be cold enough, depending on, doesn't matter where you are. This is going to be just a snowfall event for you. Where I think we see those heavier snow bands is where we're going to get into what Steve was just mentioning, or the higher amount of snow is going to be based on where those snow bands end up setting up. So folks might be closer to 20 inches because they saw that training event of just one heavy snow band after the next, while others might stay a little bit on the lower side because we end up missing out on one of those snow bands there. So that's kind of more of the reasoning for us as far as what we can expect for snow amounts versus an elevation dependent event or our temperatures. So not quite as similar to a different event where we talk about freezing rain with some warm air trying to get mixed in higher up. This is all cold for us, but where those bands set up, that's where we're going to see that potential for those spiking snow totals amount there. You combine the high winds with all that snow, and we're going to have that potential for reduced visibility. I think reduced visibility across the board, not only for folks in eastern Connecticut or the shoreline. I think this is going to be an issue for everybody across the state as we go through the overnight period. We're just going to really notice those heaviest bands of snow just causing whiteout conditions out there. Of course, we got those gusty winds to go along with it. Here you go again. If you guys want to take this full screen, this might make it easier for everyone to see at home. 40 to 50 miles per hour for everyone there, highlighted in that orange shade. So more or less west of the river there, the exception being the 95 corridor and then out into eastern Connecticut. Those gusts there could be at 50, 60 miles per hour. And then that area of pink out in Rhode Island, those are wind gusts potentially 65 miles per hour or more. And we did have a question earlier about, would this be considered a Category 1 hurricane? If you're just looking at the wind speeds out on Cape Cod, well, that would qualify as a Category 1 storm. But for us, winds, fortunately, Steve, we're not talking about 70 mile per hour gusts. That would definitely cause power outages, more widespread than, just scattered.
And there was another question I had, Anthony, too. If someone was wondering, does this have the potential to be as bad as the October 2011 snowstorm, which fell around Halloween and a bunch of leaves on the trees? But no, it does not seem to be that intense because that one was just widespread tree damage across Connecticut. The weight of the snow, that was even a stickier, pastier snow than this one is. And plus all of the leaves on the trees. Luckily, we're looking at bare trees, and we've oftentimes heard Chief Meteorologist Ryan Hanrahan say this about bare trees in the winter. You really kind of need those wind gusts to get beyond 60 miles per hour before there's a real big concern about widespread outages and tree damage. Now, with the gusts that we have tonight, we're forecasting 40 to 60, so we at least expect some of those power outages and also tree damage. But as you look live in Waterbury, There is some snow falling. This is live, so you can see that little caterpillar snow brush is clearing the path, but the trees aren't moving that much. So we're settling in on mostly a snowy night tonight. I think tonight's big story is that the snow gets steadier tonight and heavier, and then around sunrise tomorrow morning is when the strongest core of the winds arrive. The trees look okay there in Waterbury, so we're doing okay, though it looks like it's hard to tell how much snow has fallen because, we had so much on the ground from the last storm. I remember looking at the Waterbury camera this week, and there was actually a good deal of green that was showing back up. The grass was actually re-emerging for the first time in weeks, only to get recovered. So it looks like we've already picked up a couple of inches just from that bird's eye view in Waterbury. Okay, temp-wise, let's take a look at temps across the state because this is all snow. This is anytime the temperature is kind of close to 30 or generally on the wetter side of snow. So the snow might be a little bit more powdery in Winstead and Norfolk at 25, 26. We're generally about 29 to 31 in the quote-unquote quiet corner of Connecticut into Tolland and Windham counties. And we're at 29 Ashford, Tolland as well. So that's a stickier, pastier snow. Even at the shoreline, we're at 32 Lisbon, 32 Madison, and Meriden, Wallingford. So definitely a pastier snow, but this is all snow, so it's cold enough for that. Trumbull's the warm spot coming in at 34. Even with 34, I still expect that to be all snow that we have coming down. So here's again the wider perspective of this low pressure center that's forming. Now the radar again, so the radars are kind of lined up all along the east coast, and they can only see so far out over the ocean. So it is likely precipitating here, but the radar just can't see it. But it's interesting, the conversation comes up about the strength of a hurricane and equating that kind of thing. There have been some really strong winter nor'easters that do the same amount of wind damage as a tropical storm or maybe a Cat 1 hurricane would do in the extreme open-faced areas, especially in Mass. They take a beating on the coastline there in eastern Mass. Luckily, we're here in Connecticut. We find ourselves a little bit more sheltered. Over land, there's some more friction. So the wind gusts are generally less as you get inland. If you're higher elevation, you are subject to some of the higher wind gusts, though, because there's a little less friction around you. You're almost kind of on a podium, and the wind can get you just a little bit more. So we are seeing those low visibilities, the impact of travel. Hopefully everything is going okay. So tomorrow's planner, for what you can expect as you wake up tomorrow, it's snow and wind at 7 a.m., 27 degrees. 26 blizzard at 10 a.m., which actually, we show this planner hundreds of times throughout the year here at NBC Connecticut, and you just never see the word blizzard popping up on the actual bar. And then snow gets lighter in the afternoon, still kind of snow showery. So if you kind of want to take clean up the snow in one chunk, you could probably make an attempt at doing that around midday tomorrow. If you clean up the snow late morning tomorrow, let's say between 10 and noon, you're probably going to have to go back out at some point tomorrow night or Tuesday morning because of the drifting snow and additional light snow accumulation. But you'd probably be only taking care of a few inches of snow at that point. So it's in bursts. We get about half of our snow tonight and the other half tomorrow morning. And then after 4 o'clock, okay, then we're drier, but it's windy. So then some of the drifting snow can continue. Since tonight's snow is kind of pasty, we do expect it to not blow around as much. So there will be some drifts, but hopefully settling down in. So that's a little recap. Anthony, how are things going over for you as we continue this blizzard coverage?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, we're still expecting a good bit more snow, Steve. 10, 20 inches by the time all of this is said and done. Good Morning Gamer says 10 to 20. It seems like a really big range. Which region is likely to get hit on the higher end of that? So it is a big range. It's a 10-inch spread there, and the reason for that is kind of like what Steve was just showing, talking about those snow bands that are moving through. So once we can see those snow bands on radar, we can know exactly which direction they're going to be traveling, and that's where we can end up saying, okay, this part of the state, we're going to see that snow band move in. That will add a good bit of snow to your area. So the spread is there because of those snow bands. If you miss the snow band, you're closer to the lower end of that spectrum. If you get the snow band, you're going to be on the higher end of the spectrum there. We're just going to notice waves upon waves of bands moving through the region, going through tonight as well. Nurse Lauren, at Nurse Lauren 2779 asks or says, in Uncasville, Connecticut, are we getting hit bad? Just worried about power outages there. And that's a really good point. I want to pull in what we're seeing right now in Connecticut as far as power outages go. And luckily, there's only a couple of towns across the state that are actually reporting any kind of outage. Still don't know if that's weather related, but right now we're still in really good shape. So the threat for outages will go up as we move past midnight and likely not until 3 a.m. or so. So I know, Lauren, you're in Uncasville, so you're in southeastern Connecticut. You will have the potential to see some pretty strong wind gusts moving through that overnight period. So that's winds, gusting anywhere from potentially 50 to 60 miles per hour for your part of the state there. That is enough where if you get a lot of snow on the trees, especially, evergreen trees, they can hold on to that snow a little bit more. Those branches get weighed down, and that's where you can get limbs that are breaking. So if you're in a more rural neighborhood or a rural part of Uncasville there, the potential for outages is definitely going to be up. So just make sure you're prepared for that. Let's talk about some snow totals that we've seen so far. Mr. Drummings in Winstead has about an inch so far. In West Haven, maybe about 2 inches. And they're actually saying, Steve, fine and icy snow as well. So we still have some of those cooler temperatures. Let me see if I can pull in. Do we have a current temperature for the Connecticut shoreline? Let me pull this up here. So right now, New Haven, close to about 31 there, where we find some of the cooler air still locked away in northwestern Connecticut. So 25, 27, 29 degrees between New Milford, Waterbury. That's where we could still have some finer snow. I'm not ruling that out for the shore there, but with the heavier bands that'll be moving in, Steve, I'm just thinking we're going to have that heavy wet snow for most of the night there. So I think enjoy some of the finer snow while you can and kind of get that out of the way before we just keep adding to that,
I think so. I think you're right, Anthony. And I'm looking at some of the reports too. There's a thing called MPing reports. It's like a citizen science, collection. You can give a report right on there. You can kind of find a way. MPing. I'm looking at some of these MPing reports, and snow and/or grapple and some icy conditions also starting to accumulate in New London area. We'll take a live look at the radar here in just a second. This is the best we could do with our New London camera. I mean, best we can do in terms of working against the blur. It's just kind of getting blurry in the snow. But if you look closely beyond this kind of darker object on the left-hand side, you see almost like sheets of snow coming in, similar to what you would experience in the summertime with summertime thunderstorms, where you have sheets of rain coming in from a downpour. You see the wind-blown snow coming through in almost kind of waves and sheets. Sometimes you can get that perspective. Now, interestingly, we started this live stream about 50 minutes ago at the top of the hour at 8 o'clock, and we took this picture, I would say probably roughly 15 or 20 minutes ago, and you could see the buildings in downtown Hartford pretty well with a visibility that was not half bad, but the visibility in Hartford is now really deteriorating. This is probably, we're probably getting down to about 2 mile to maybe 1.5 mile visibility. Still, I would say doable for travel, but the deeper we get through tonight, we can't support and advise travel. You can do what you want. However, if you have to, making sure that you have all the essential things in your vehicle to make sure that you get through just fine and that you're traveling okay. It starts with the tires, good enough snow tires, making sure that you have the traction to get through. And four-wheel drive, awesome. And if not, you get some of the things like a winter, I don't want to say survival kit, but a winter kit. Warm clothing and that kind of thing to make sure that you have everything out there. I've got, in my vehicle, I've got a big bright yellow vest, something that you would almost wear running to make sure you're visible, is reflective in case you have to actually step out of your vehicle for any reason. So here's live storm tracker Doppler radar. The whole state seeing snow right now, but we are zooming things out because there are some of these bands that are moving through. In fact, there's a really intense band right here. You see on the western tip of Long Island, goes up into coastal Connecticut and the Long Island shore. That's a big band that is now producing some pretty heavy snowfall rates over the southern half of Connecticut. These are all these green colors. So I know green on our legend correlates to rain, but this is more so the raw nature of the size of the object. So the radar is seeing how big the objects are, how many there are, and you know, the more larger items they see, it has darker colors, promotes some heavier precipitation. Seeing that in the Old Saybrook, Groton, some of the steadier snowfall here across sections of Connecticut coastal, and especially Fairfield into Middlesex, New London, New Haven counties. Really some steady snowfall in Sonia now getting it. And as we take a little bit of a wider look, we look down toward the south of Long Island for where we are expecting some of our incoming weather, because it's all streaming up from the northwest Atlantic Ocean. This is showing some of the heavier, there's a big band that's just now entering the state, and then there's also some pretty steady precipitation south of the eastern tip of Long Island. And that means that as this moves in, that we are expecting some of the heavier precipitation. We did get an interesting question about someone who knows meteorology a little bit more. They had mentioned the benchmark. There's a 40-70 benchmark, basically a latitude-longitude line that we use as kind of a quick resource out here for if we get big impacts from a nor'easter. And they said if the storm is crossing that benchmark sweet spot for us to get a big storm, why are the snowfall totals higher to our east? If you've been following along, Rhode Island and areas between, I'd say, Providence and Boston are in kind of the bullseye for that. And I think, Anthony, that has to do with more of where some convergence is, maybe where those steadier bands come in, and even into eastern Mass, you get some influence of that east wind coming off the Atlantic Ocean. I think some more enhancement there, too.
No, for sure. And I just think it's really interesting to look at the radar behind you guys. If you could take Max-A full screen for a second and just kind of show, I think it's really interesting to see that band essentially stretching more or less Martha's Vineyard, and you can see that going all the way, hugging the shoreline, and then as it gets to Fairfield County, kind of dips further to the south there, and then is about to move through New York City. So a very long stretched area of some heavier precipitation there. So very impressive to see that. But as we look toward the south a little bit, and there you go, thanks, Steve. Bridgeport, Milford, New Haven, and Sonia, seeing the rest of that band as well. For the folks that are keeping an eye on some of our DOT cameras, if you could find a shoreline cam, let's take Old Lyme. That's the view outside right now, 95 there. You can see the highways there covered in snow. If we could switch this in just a little bit, maybe try to find a camera on 95 closer to Bridgeport, probably also seeing some heavier snow there as well. We got a couple of reports in from the National Weather Service. Wilton now reporting 3 inches of snowfall there. That was from 8:47, and we go just outside, just to the northwest there of Bridgeport, Easton, with about 2.5 inches of snow. So we're starting to add things up along the shoreline. We're going to get more of those bands to kind of move through, and that's where we're going to end up seeing more in the way of some snowfall there. I can see it just barely on the screen here, but we shift down to Long Island, and you can see a lot more snow reports there. So let's just choose a couple at random, just because I'm interested. Let's see if this will work. If not, I can click on it here. Let's go to central Long Island there. So they've already seen 4 inches of snow there. That's the airport reading, 2 inches per hour, and that was between 7 and 8 p.m. So that heavy band of snow, it's not too far away. So places down in New York, they're already seeing that. Let's see if I can tap into another report here. 8 inches of snow there as you get toward the eastern end of Long Island. And then let's take another report maybe closer to New York City there. So about 4 inches of snow in that part of Long Island. So that snow, it's not too far away from us right now. And we're just expecting more of that to kind of continue to pinwheel into Connecticut. So let's pull up, let's go back to, where was it, Bridgeport, Stamford? Is that what you said? Okay, right on the Stamford line. So there you go. Actually, looks like there's some of the, looks like that's the DOT as they begin maybe to plow that section of the highway. It looks like the whole train of plow trucks there about ready to get onto the highway and do some clearing. You got some folks there with the hazard lights on. That's always good. Make sure you're driving slow. And you can, of course, see on that camera view all the tire ruts there. So there's accumulating snow out there on the highways for sure. Let's switch this back over to our regular radar here, where we end up seeing some of those deeper shadings of blue. You go toward the 95 corridor. We just saw that camera down Bridgeport and Stamford. You can see where those heavier snow bands, the result of that coating the roadways there, but we also have some moderate snow going on in the interior. Let's take a look at ID4 in West Hartford. If we can take that camera, and we can see where, there it comes. Let's see where it is. We can get to it in just a second. There it is. So even in West Hartford, well away from the shoreline, we are seeing the snow out there. Maybe not quite as bad in shape of 95 compared to 95, but you can definitely see how the roads are getting coated up even in the West Hartford area. We were looking at some of our other cameras and also seeing that snow just really sticking with it. But you take a look, Steve and I have been talking about that snow band, moving through the southern part of the state, but also down between Norwich, Groton, also seeing some more of that more moderate snow, deeper shadings of blue there. Norwich to Ledyard, Groton, New London, seeing that right there. Old Mystic as well. Sections of North Stonington, Montville, also seeing some of that more moderate snow. And just as we go through tonight, we are going to end up seeing those snow bands work their way through, periods of heavy snow. Let's go through this hour by hour. We'll walk you through what we can expect as we get closer to midnight. So right now, waves of heavier snow bands, heavier snow showers, that continues, but it's 3 a.m. where we're still expecting a lot of the heaviest snow to arrive. With all of that snow is going to be coming those very gusty winds. So right now, if you step outside, you'll notice the snow coming down, but it's not that bad out there, temperature-wise or wind condition-wise. There's some spots that are starting to get a little gusty, but it's nothing we can't handle. So the impactful winds, the winds that we could be talking about where we have the potential for scattered power outages, that doesn't arrive until after midnight, and especially as we get closer to about 3 o'clock in the morning, Steve.
Yeah, I'm just reading the report that we got here from Lisbon, I believe. Eversource is on the scene of an accident with a utility pole. Anthony, that's Route 169 North, there between Route 138 and Kinsman Hill Road. That's because of some downed wires, car versus pole with minor injuries. So just kind of reading that from what we've received in here. So that just kind of shows you some of the impacts and the slippery roads that we have tonight across the area. We just get a report too of 2 inches north Guilford. And we've also gotten a couple of requests to look at the 10-day. So let's talk about the future the next little bit of time. As we look at this storm system just really starting to get going, the low pressure is just east of about Ocean City, Maryland, and it continues to gain strength really kind of rapidly tonight. So I think a lot of the heaviest snow accumulation comes tonight, and then it's wind-blown snow by the time the sun rises tomorrow morning. So here's a wider perspective of it. The streamlines show the wind, which is a classic nor'easter. This is at 8:30, so basically this half hour. We're approaching 9 o'clock now. And that snow continues. It almost kind of makes Connecticut disappear a little bit. This is 6 a.m. tomorrow, so we're right in the meat and potatoes of the thing with strong north winds. Really quite intense winds at this point for tomorrow morning is when the strongest winds are. The snow showers actually start to break apart by about midday through the afternoon tomorrow, but the wind stays very steady. So the wind will be a big deal all day long tomorrow. The snow finally moving away here into the east of Connecticut by 5 p.m. And then we get a chance to kind of quiet things down. Tuesday, lighter wind and some sun makes its way out. Now it's a cool day, but I think with our sun, we can actually help clean up and melt a little bit. I could see some impacts in terms of some delays or cancellations kind of spill over to Tuesday. We did see that last month with our January snowstorm, which fell on a Sunday. We saw it overlap into Monday and Tuesday. Now by Wednesday, there's another quick disturbance floating through, and there is the chance at additional snow showers. I know it kind of pains me to say it too. On Wednesday morning through midday, just looking at this particular model, that would probably result in some light accumulation. Perhaps a coating to 2 inches, just a quick glance at that model right there on Wednesday. And then as we get into Wednesday night, you see some more green pop up and the winds are out of the southwest, so that's kind of a milder direction. We should expect kind of a steady climb above the freezing mark through the end of the week and maybe even 40s. So as we look at the next 10 days, the big difference from, there we go, we're streaming, but we're still cueing that NBC music for you. So last month when we had the snow, it got down to 0 degrees every night for the next roughly 2 weeks and the highs were about 10 to 20 degrees. Not the case this time around. Luckily, we will be heading into March, Sunday of next weekend, and generally speaking, that's a higher sun angle to take care of the snow, and we expect some warmer temperatures. Now, Tuesday will still be chilly, only 29. So we get some melting from the sun Tuesday, but not a lot from the air temp. And then we're down to the single digits and teens Wednesday morning, but that's kind of where we're at rock bottom. Then Wednesday, that light snow shower chance into a light mix again on Thursday with temperatures on either side of freezing. But then Friday, 38. Then look at the weekend, 45 Saturday, 40 Sunday. A cool down to begin March, yes. However, at least not way down into the doldrums and basement like we had last month. Shoreline generally tends to be a couple degrees warmer than the inland locations. This time of the year it's interesting because the sound is actually very cold, so sometimes you can actually stay a little chillier. But we do expect some more so rain with that Thursday event. You'll still probably get some snow showers at the shore on Wednesday with that other quick clipper system. And then this weekend, low to mid 40s. We have inland 45 Saturday, shoreline 42. That's because the wind's coming off the sound, so a little bit cooler there. And then a little bit cooler next week, but not bad. So at least I think, Anthony, that to me gives me a little bit of a silver lining that we are getting a blizzard, but after all, Sunday is March 1st. We tend to start to get some milder weather by then.
And I think something else that's going to help us too, Steve. So in addition to just warmer temperatures, but I think you might have touched on this as well, but the sun angle being, what, more like November, if
Yes.
you will. So the sun is having more of an impact on us, and that is definitely working in our favor. So yes, I don't think we'll have to see that snow sticking around as long as the last batch did. But we just crossed 9 o'clock here, so I thought it'd be good to do a little recap for folks that might be just joining us here on the NBC Connecticut streaming channel as well as on our YouTube page. You can also go to our YouTube page, ask us questions. We have the feeds. We're getting the messages from the feeds, so we'll be able to get to your questions there. So recapping all of this, we've been talking about that snow moving into Connecticut. We've already seen a couple of heavier snow bands, and we're seeing that now, especially for areas along the shoreline. By the time all of this is over by tomorrow evening, 10 to 20 inches across the state, those snow bands could throw a little bit of a wrench into that. Some folks skewing more toward the 20-inch mark, while if you miss out on a snow band, that would push you closer to the lower end of that spectrum. Unlike the last storm, we'll have some pretty strong winds with this event. Not right now. Winds aren't that bad, actually, as you step out the door this evening. However, as we go into the overnight period past midnight, we're expecting winds to gust anywhere from 40 to 60 miles per hour across the state. I think the further east you get into Connecticut, the greater of a chance you have at seeing those winds above 50 miles per hour. Again, those are your peak wind gusts. Not going to be gusting like that the entire time, but for peak wind gusts. Now, of course, you combine the heavy snow with the wind, and you get reduced, if not zero, visibility. So whiteout conditions will be possible heading into that overnight period as well. Again, the worst impacts we're expecting 3 a.m. to roughly 10 o'clock in the morning. I think by 9, 10 a.m. we start to break apart those snow showers just a little bit statewide. So snow totals here. Again, 10 to 20 inches across the entire board. We take a look at live radar right now. You can see where we have some of those higher snow bands, more intense snow bands. So we got one further down the shoreline there for places like Bridgeport. We also have that another snow band for portions of southeastern Connecticut. Now we switch this over to a radar that you would see during the summertime. Same data, but it's a little bit easier to see that snow band here. If you guys want to take this full screen, it might be a little easier for everyone at home to see. So we have places like Norwich, Groton. You guys are seeing some of those snow bands right now, and that is actually a pretty decent band. That stretches from essentially the Rhode Island border, Stonington, and goes all the way down 95 to roughly go outside of Old Saybrook, Madison, potentially there, Clinton, seeing some of that snow as well, some pretty heavy snow at that. But we work our way down toward Brantford, toward New Haven, and you get to the north and west of New Haven, so places like Ansonia, down toward Trumbull, we get toward Bridgeport, Westport, also seeing some very heavy snow. Guys, do we have a camera in that part of the state that we could take live as well? Do we have that Bridgeport-Stamford line camera? Okay, get 1 second. We're going to pop that up on the screen. We were looking at that earlier, and you could really just see how there you go. That's the Bridgeport area, and you can just see slow going out there on 95. And there's actually, Steve, I'm actually kind of surprised how many folks are still out there on the roadways. Looks like some folks, they're going slow. They got their hazards on, but there's still a good amount of people out on the highways. Of course, when we talk about the crews that have to be out there and clearing those roadways, you do not want to be on the roads, especially near them. You want to make sure you're giving the plows plenty of room on the highway, so don't be near them. If you have to be out tonight and you see the crews out there working, just make sure that you are giving them plenty of distance. If not, just staying home tonight. We're expecting conditions to get a little bit worse as we head through tonight. Steve, I'll send things over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Can't echo that enough. Anthony, stay off the roads, please, 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 unless you have to go out there. Here's a live look at Bradley International Airport. So it's zoomed in. We took a look at this about a half hour ago toward the terminal, and you can see the planes, the crew a lot more easily, but not the case tonight. We're just kind of reading through some comments too. I just checked NBCConnecticut.com. Right on the homepage in red toward the top, we've got current closings and delays. It's basically all cancellations for tomorrow. There are so many schools already calling it for a long weekend here for this weekend. Pushes us probably back into the summer a little bit more, but boy, that's the right call. There was another question about the odds of Old Saybrook. Walmart closed on Monday, working at 1:30 tomorrow. By 1:30, I think it's still tough to get around, but the snowfall is kind of winding down. Still snowing, still wind-blown snow. One of those things, maybe you can hopefully have some empathy from the employer about getting to work under these conditions. Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about the likelihood of folks losing power. Well, with the strong winds, let's talk about the timing of the winds and that power. We'll address that question. Here's a look in New London. You can see sheets of snow, a little bit blurry, but a little bit in terms of the sheets of snow that are coming through. So everybody's getting these big bands right now. There's also more bands developing to the south, all pushing up to the north. That's really heavy snowfall. Makes it hard for the crews to keep up with too. So these are just some of the bands that we're seeing moving through the southern part of the state. So the wind speeds right now are not at a level to knock out power. This is at around 10 to 15 miles an hour. There is a wind sustained at 20 miles an hour at Bridgeport now. So we're okay for now. The power outage potential would probably be closer to sunrise tomorrow morning, so roughly in about 8 hours from now or so. The wind gusts are behaving themselves. I say behaving themselves because they're generally under that 40-mile-per-hour range. Once we get up at a 40 miles per hour plus, then we can start to get some power flickers or maybe even some isolated outages or maybe a little bit of weak tree damage that is across the state. But right now, 20 to 23 miles an hour. Bridgeport is the strongest gust at the moment. So the winds are okay for now. The likelihood of outages, it's up there for tomorrow. Actually, before we dive a little bit more into the forecast, Anthony, you've got a nice little map I'm seeing out of the corner of my eye in terms of outages as it stands right now.
Yeah, as it stands right now, the state is we're still in really good shape. There's a few folks that might be out of power. We take a look here at the map. You guys can take this full screen as well. That'll definitely be easier for folks to see. But we start in the middle of your screen there, that larger blob of yellow, that is Middletown. So it looks like a couple of outages there, maybe a couple of folks without power. Just to the north of that other small little polygon there, that's Rocky Hill. So it looks like a couple of folks there. And then in southwestern Connecticut, we have a few folks that are out of power, Danbury as well as in Ridgefield. Now, when we see yellow like that, that is at or less than 1% of the entire customers for those towns there. So not really talking about much, if anything, in the way of outages at the moment. And that kind of goes hand in hand with what Steve was just talking about with those wind gusts. So we're really not seeing those winds gusting all that much right now. Steve, what was that, 25, 30 miles per hour in just a few locations?
Yeah, 20, 23.
Yeah, so once we get past midnight, that's when we're likely going to see those winds really start to increase their force. Let me see if I can jump this forward a little bit, talking about some of those winds and that potential power outage risk for us a little bit there. So by midnight, now I think more locations are starting to join those wind gusts, potentially gusting 30 miles per hour, 25, 30 miles per hour. The Hartford area, you get into eastern Connecticut, gusts maybe 35, and then along the Connecticut shoreline, that's where we can end up seeing those winds getting closer to 40, maybe 45 miles per hour or so. But watch what happens by 3 a.m. We see this across the board, especially along the shore and eastern Connecticut. But Stonington potentially gusting over 55. Same thing with Groton. You look down Chester, New Haven, Bridgeport, all gusting to near 50. Meanwhile, the Connecticut River Valley, the Hartford area up to Windsor Locks, that could be, just kind of shielded a little bit in the valley with winds there only about 40 miles per hour. But as we move through the overnight and then waking up Monday morning, well, even the Hartford area has that potential for gusts over 45, if not close to 50. Now remember, these are wind gusts. They are not sustained winds. This is going to be waves of wind, if you will. But we look at eastern Connecticut, that potential for that higher end of the spectrum there, closer to 50 or 60 mile per hour peak gusts, not out of the question and not too far away from Connecticut. You go out toward Rhode Island and then eastern Mass, Cape Cod, gusts over 65 miles per hour as a possibility there as well, Steve.
I was just thinking to myself, Anthony, statistical facts about weather. Remember we had the snowstorm after Christmas?
Yes.
It was December 27th, somewhere around there.
Yep.
Then, of course, we had it on January 25th and 26th, and now February 23rd.
So are we saying March 23rd?
No,
March?
please. I can't handle that.
I can't handle
the thought of a March 20th spring. Happy spring. Here's a nor'easter. Mentally, I'm not prepared for that. I am just reading an article, NBCConnecticut.com. We just posted this. It's state officials urge people to stay off road as blizzard moves in. It's from the governor's office with a press conference earlier today about the state of emergency, free-flowing resources to where they are needed through the course of this storm, and just about the danger about being on the roads. You can find that on the app as well. Just looking through that, we just posted that there. Okay, so here's a live look in Litchfield, where it's nice to see quiet. Yes, a lot of things are shut down by Sunday at 9 o'clock anyways, but it's nice to see no one really venturing out too much. The roads are becoming more snow covered there. Here's a look at the Founders Bridge, and you've got I-91, so southbound going left, northbound going right. A fair number of cars on Interstate 91 right there, but they are going pretty slow that we see, which is always appreciated. Ice and snow, take it slow. So where's this camera here? 84 in Newtown. We've got a couple of hazard lights on, and boy, it's quiet. I like to see that. Nice and quiet. You give the plow crews the total road to take care and clear that. If you have to go out, though, notice that those are the conditions. They are snow covered, some accumulation, a little bit of condensation on the lens. A lot of hazard lights that are on, too, as folks go out and about. Hopefully this merge is okay as we watch those two vehicles getting on the highway and traveling here through the same direction. So ice and snow, take it slow. That's what I always say with these kinds of conditions. The visibility also going down in the Hartford area, now below a mile at the Brainerd Airport location, reading 3/4 of a mile. So anywhere you see about a half mile or below, that's where it can be kind of pretty tough to see and navigate. And this is generally where we are seeing the steady snow band, the steadiest of the snow band right now. Anywhere you see 1/2, that's a half mile visibility, and is primarily the southern half of Connecticut through portions of the coastline and inland areas too. No one at a 1/4 mile visibility. We'll be watching that carefully, because when we get to a 1/4 mile or less with the winds, that's blizzard criteria. So it's not quote-unquote blizzarding yet, but we will probably get to that level sometime late tonight. So live Storm Tracker Doppler radar as we zoom out and loop this to show you what's moving in. The whole state seeing snow. It's light to moderate, but there's this band right here just moved over the sound, is now pushing inland as it comes in. Think of this as if you're at the beach and you're hanging out in the water, and you ever notice that you can kind of count almost 3 or 4 waves down. You see the wave approaching, you see another one behind that, maybe a 4th one. It's almost like if you're watching these snow bands, we've got one entering the state, there's another one south of the sound, there's another one. These waves will just kind of be coming through the state. So it'll be varying intensities tonight. And that means that if anybody traveling could get caught off guard with one of these steadier bands that moves in. If you look outside, it's not doing much outside. Storm must be over. Not necessarily. You could have one of these bands that come in. Another way to look at the radar here with the just kind of raw product. This is some of the steadier snow down toward the shoreline in terms of what we are seeing. So that's what we're seeing, Anthony. That's all I've come across so far at the 9 o'clock hour. We're already hearing reports that we have had from the viewers of about 1 to 2 inches so far, but that'll probably be quickly changing.
Yeah, no, especially with some of these bands, Steve, that have been moving through. So you just mentioned for portions of the shoreline. Let's go a little bit further north. So we get closer to the 91 merge there in Meriden, and you can see that darker area of green. So just like Steve, I've switched this over to the raw product for us. We look further to the southwest. So you go just further to the south there of Meriden. We zoom that in a little bit more, getting closer to Cheshire there. Route 10 through Cheshire, there's that new radar data starting to come in. Down through Bethany, you can see that darker shading of green, even some spotty areas of yellow. So that indicates where we have some more moderate snow starting to fall. You go to Seymour, just outside of Oxford as well, and Sonia, down through Monroe. This is a long snow band that just continues into the southwestern part of the state. Route 25, the Trumbull area, out toward Easton, and then of course you get across the Merritt, seeing some of that moderate snow, and this band just keeps going. Now we're in Norwalk, Darien, up towards Stamford, and that band, there you go, that just continues out, just briefly getting out of there the way of Greenwich and out over areas of Long Island Sound. So we definitely have a good snow band set up for western Connecticut. How about eastern Connecticut? What have we seen for you guys? So far, quiet corner. It remains quiet. We definitely still have snow out there, but nothing too impressive just yet. But I am keeping an eye on that other snow band that we can see there, essentially from just outside there of Newport, Rhode Island, and that stretches and kind of fades away as we get down toward the Route 9 and 95 merge there in Old Saybrook. But you can see that darker shading of green moving through Norwich, just about at least to get into Norwich. And there's, we switch over to the Taunton radar there in Mass. You can see a good little spike there with that snow. So this is just to the north of Route 2. So you got Norwich, Griswold there. I believe this is near Voluntown. There's Voluntown there. Route 165 out toward Preston as well. Also seeing some of those more moderate snow showers. Let's see if we can try to zoom this out a little bit. And we look toward 395 further to the north. So Killingly, not snowing all that heavy at the moment. Maybe some slightly steadier snow out in Windham toward Willimantic, and then as we get closer to the Yukon campus there in Storrs, Coventry also, the potential there, some lighter, darker shading of green. And this also extends maybe just outside of Rocky Hill and toward sections of Cromwell, and then jumping right over the river there as well. So pockets of some steadier snow. Just one thing to keep in mind, we had some folks on one of the Facebook groups, just as a reminder, once we get all of this snow to pile up, it is very important that you clear all that snow away from both, the drains out there on the roadways, but also the fire hydrants. If there's ever an emergency, those crews need to be able to find the hydrants, get access to them, and then of course use them. So as the snow piles up tonight and you're shoveling the sidewalk, also make sure you're shoveling around the fire hydrant. They're roughly 3 feet around the hydrant. If you can walk around it at a good pace, the firefighters can do the same, and that just makes sure everyone can stay safe, Steve, as we go through tonight. Just want to make sure you clear out those drains and the hydrants.
I was out yesterday, Anthony, shoveling out a small part of the end of the driveway where it meets the road, typically where the snow plows just kind of, dump everything.
Love that part of the driveway.
Inadvertently. But it was I was just kind of picking away at the pile from the last storm in January. That stuff was heavy. It was like chunky, icy, very dense.
I was trying to, so I attempted to use the snowblower today just as a nice little test to get it going. I think it just needs a full clean. And I tried going through the existing snow that was on the ground, and it did not like it one bit
It said no.
all. It said no. And I think that's what some folks may find if their snowblower is a little bit on the fritz, or if it's a smaller one. It is going to be a heavy, wet snow by the end of this, and that might create some problems there, even for some of the snowblowers too.
Hopefully the snowblower's in good working condition.
Yeah.
We'll have to tune up Anthony's before we get to tomorrow morning.
Well, that's what I said about the last storm too, and there we are. So.
I know. Of course, it always comes to that point. I always realize I need to change the windshield wipers on my vehicle when I'm in the snow, and I'm like, this wiper's terrible. Okay, we've got a new note, a new crash, unfortunately, from Simsbury Police Department. Got a call of a car on its side on Plank Hill Road in Simsbury. Thankfully, no injuries, but car on its side. Still working on some details here in our newsroom, but please, again, take it safe. If you don't have to venture out, I mean, you can venture out, go ahead and, oh yeah, there's my slogan. This is going to be my campaign when I run for office here. Ice and snow, take it slow. That's our whole thing. When we are talking about the conditions outside, we understand there are some essential workers, but as long as you're kind of taking it easy out there tonight. I do want to talk about the conditions currently. Again, we're at the 9 o'clock hour, so we're getting some of the new data in. We are looking at visibility a mile or less across the state, so that is indicative of light to moderate snow falling, heavy snow, moderate to maybe perhaps borderline heavy when you get to half-mile visibility, which we are seeing in the southern part of the state. So everybody's seeing snow right now. There are some steadier bands that continue to push in, and it's just kind of coming through in waves as we look at a different kind of color of the radar here across southeastern Connecticut and areas across the especially southern half of the state, getting the deeper greens. Let's stop the image to show you some of the deeper bands of snow right now. A band is just moving into Waterbury, so I'll be interested to look at that Waterbury camera as we get to 84. This band currently stretches southwest to northeast. There's a live look at it. That reminds me of the movie Wall-E with a little, he's always cleaning up there, the little snowplow that just keeps running. It's tiny compared to the path, but it just keeps going around cleaning up the snow constantly as it's moving around. And they've been making passes, but it's piling up pretty quick. Hard to see the snow actually accumulate there, but that's what it looks like. So there is a steadier band approaching Waterbury right now, which actually you can almost follow the band. It's just parallel and southeast of I-84. As you get up south of Hartford, it kind of loses its resolution, spreads out here into northeast Connecticut, but there's another band that's moving now from Stonington up Route 2 here through Norwich and out of Rhode Island. So there's another steadier one. Then meanwhile, Middletown, you have a little lull. So it's just kind of, we're now entering the phase of this storm where we're kind of going through the steadier bands. It gets lighter. Another bigger band that pushes through. Where the storm's coming from? Well, south of Long Island Sound and the Long Island itself. Some very steady snow that pushes in. Anytime you see these little yellow pops come out, those are some of the heavy snow amounts of 2 inches per hour. What we're seeing across the state right now is probably anywhere from about a ½ inch to 1 inch per hour. So it's a steady snow. I would say this, as this continues over the next few hours, you can get 1.5 inches to 3 inches. You go now through 3 in the morning, you're probably going to tack on 4 to possibly 6 inches of snowfall. So it's going to be very steady here over the next several hours. In terms of, now this is labeled severe weather outlook, but if you're kind of one of those, weather enthusiasts that loves Thundersnow, here is the best chance at any Thundersnow tonight. It's highlighted in this green color. So this is issued from Norman, Oklahoma, this product. It's the Storm Prediction Center, and this is what's called the general thunderstorm risk. Now, we look at it in winter storms to see where we could actually hear some thundersnow or maybe see a flash. So it's possible southeast of I-84, at least it's more likely here. So that's Windham, Norwich, Middletown, Groton. It would be, if we're telling you to stay off the roads and everything, you can totally go outside and just kind of observe the weather. It's totally safe to do that. Just watch your step. And it might be a cool night if you see a big band coming toward your town. Maybe head out and just kind of listen to it. It's always just so peaceful to listen to it come down. You can hear the light snowfall accumulation. Also, the heavy snow kind of dwarfs some of the sound and also reflects some of the light at night from nearby cities. So it's kind of a cool thing to watch at night. But you might see a flash. We could have that tonight. This would be more likely later tonight as the storm really intensifies. The most intense part of the storm definitely looks like 3, 4, 5 in the morning. So if you're either setting an alarm early tonight or staying up late, you'll be in for a show. But, between now and then, we're just kind of ramping things up to the crescendo that will be sometime around tomorrow morning as we look at that. Anthony, you got something?
Yeah, I'm just taking a look at the, there's actually a meso discussion, Steve,
Okay.
that's kind of stretches from Long Island all the way out toward Cape Cod, but it does include us here in Connecticut. And it just says, moderate to heavy snowfall will increase this evening, impacting areas in New York City. There's going to be a significant storm for them as well, but it also includes us here in Connecticut. So that polygon, I'll see if I can pull that up on the screen here in just a little bit. But that kind of just highlighting that potential later on tonight when we talk about those heavier snow bands setting up over Connecticut. The potential for blizzard conditions will be there.
Interesting. Anthony's ears just perked up. He hears the NBC cue. He's like, wait a minute, we're wrapping things up. No, we still got about a half hour to go here with you on our streams and platforms. I do want to show you the extended forecast for what's after this as Anthony works on that latest detailed weather discussion over Connecticut. Is that we have snow and wind through the day tomorrow. Tomorrow afternoon is when the snow ends. I would say on average the snow is winding down around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And 30 degrees the high, but it'll feel colder with the wind. We get to 20 tomorrow night, so conditions will be icy tomorrow night and only 29 the high on Tuesday. So we won't get much melting from the air temp on Tuesday. We'll get more melting from the sun. Sun angle nowadays, it's getting up there. It's a lot higher than it was back in December. So at least we have that going for us to help with some of the cleanup from Mother Nature. But this week features more unsettled weather again. Wednesday, snow showers. As it stands right now, that could put down some light accumulation of another inch or two across the state. It pains me a little bit to say that, but a little bit more accumulation. And then there could be another wintry mix of a little snow and rain on Thursday. The weekend looking promising for now. It's the start of March on Sunday. And what's interesting, the following Sunday, the 8th, is actually when we spring forward and we begin daylight saving time. That's right around the corner. It's 2 weeks from today. So these are kind of some silver linings or some maybe light at the end of the tunnel, but still a little bit far away as we look at that. So as we look at current wind speeds across the state, we are not in the core of the storm yet in terms of what we expect for the strongest winds. The winds right now are about 10, 12, 13 miles an hour. The shoreline is seeing the strongest winds, and they will see the strongest winds here on the shoreline throughout the entirety of the storm. A gust right now to 23 miles an hour in Stonington, 15 Chester. Block Island's 32, so it'll be fun to watch the observations out on Block Island, Martha's Vineyard, and Nantucket with more exposure there for the core of the winds. 32 miles an hour in Bridgeport has crept up a little bit. Feels cold. The air temp on average is probably around 28 degrees, 29 degrees right now, but it's feeling more so about low 20s for the feels like temperature. In terms of town by town, we're all snow. There has been a couple of reports of some icy mixture, almost some ice pellets that have been mixing in, or kind of an icy variety to the snow too. So that is something that we are watching. But even if we're at 34 Madison, it's still cold enough in the upper levels for this to be all snow. Since we are still near 30 degrees or 32, that means that we have a kind of a packier snow. It's a snow that is stickier, it's heavier. So this will be something that is going to take a little bit of extra power to take care of and clean up tomorrow. This storm system, if you've heard about it, it's a big one. The reason why it's such an impactful weather system is how fast it'll be deepening and strengthening. So the low has evolved. Where you're finding the low pressure center, it's just right around here on the east-southeast side of the shorelines of Maryland and Delaware. So the low pressure is way down there, but you can see how the snow bands go all the way here to Connecticut. And that's just because of the atmospheric pattern. It's just a lot of lift in the atmosphere, which is lifting moisture and just dumping it here across the Northeast. So for us, that means we've already made it past the lighter snowfall rates that we've had. We are now here into the 9 o'clock time frame. So I'd say we've entered the phase now where we're kind of going to be maxing out our snow rates through about tomorrow morning. Over the next 12 hours, the heaviest snow potential. Most of the snow should fall tonight, but there will be additional accumulation into the daylight hours. In the afternoon tomorrow is when the snow rates drop off quite a bit, anytime after the 12 o'clock hour. Now the winds will be something to watch. especially in southeastern Connecticut. Because as we get toward tomorrow morning, boy, those wind gusts 45 to 55 miles per hour. So what this means is probably will be some isolated outages, especially in eastern, southeastern Connecticut. So do plan on some power outages, especially if you're in kind of a more prone location to that happening. And just in case, I always like to be safe and prepared and kind of over prepare. That way, at the end of the day, even if you don't get anything, you're okay and all set. And for that, you're charging essential electronics, maybe finding an alternative for a friend or family's house in case you have to go a couple of days without electricity. I don't think it's a widespread, week-long devastation across the state. I think it's more isolated, or at least favoring eastern Connecticut for the highest potential. That's the strongest winds will be. And I do think we'll get some, especially because of the strong combination of the wind. And then it might take a little longer than normal because of the big amount of snow banks or snow drifts that some of the crews may have to get around. So that's what we have the latest. Now, if you're just joining us, we've had a special weather discussion issued for Connecticut, which we typically get during the summertime. Yeah. Anthony, we get these a lot in the summer as our summer thunderstorms pop up, but sometimes during big winter events. I know we can get them in the winter time too.
Yeah, and that's what we're seeing out there tonight, Steve. So exactly, when we talk about in the summertime, the potential for severe thunderstorms, tornadoes, this time around, of course, we are talking about snow. We're talking about heavy snow. So we can see this discussion, which includes, New York City down through Manhattan, all of Long Island, and stretches out toward Cape Cod, but it does include us here in Connecticut. And essentially the highlight with this polygon is a long duration event where we can have heavy snow and snowfall rates 1-2 inches per hour in some spots, even a little bit more than that. So we've noticed the snow coming down a little bit more. Steve has been talking about where we can see some of those heavier bands right now. We've also been talking a little bit on the road conditions out there, and you can see there's already a lot of yellow out there, of course, as the snow starts to coat the ground. You got to drive a little bit slower in those locations, but also noticing some purples on the roadways there, so we have very slow traffic. I was looking at Connecticut roads, and there was a couple of traffic incidents. Lisbon, Route 169, North Burnham Road closed in both directions because of a crash, one vehicle hitting a utility pole with wires down on the roadway. That was from about 7:40 this evening. We also look at Cromwell crash on 91 South, exit 22N, so that's the Route 9 ramp there. The shoulder is closed, but it looks like traffic there is still able to get by. We also had that other report out in Simsbury with that crash as well. So if you have to be on the roads tonight, you really just want to make sure that you are driving very slow. But we are encouraging you to stay off the roads with all of this just mess that's going to continue for us. There's a look outside. That is in Cheshire. Only one, I don't even want to say one lane. That looks like half a lane that has relatively snow-free, if you will, but that's just from our traffic that has been moving around. So we have the tractor trailers that are still out there on the highways. Do you guys happen to know, if you guys can get in my ear, when that travel ban goes into effect, at least for the commercial vehicles? We have that posted on our website as well. Let's see if we can get to Steve. Was there any other questions that were coming in that I might have missed a question or two?
Just a report in Norwich coming down good.
Okay, yeah, in Norwich, we were talking about that potential, that snow band that was moving in. Let me see if I can pull up the radar here. Come on, let's see if it wants to load. There we go. So as we play this out, as we loop the radar, you can actually see it pretty well. All of those snow bands kind of working its way, kind of pinwheeling around a little bit there. But as we switch it over to our regular style of radar that you see during the summertime, it's a lot easier to see those heavier snow bands. We have that one more or less stretching from areas in Hartford, closer to West Hartford, all the way down, kind of hanging on to 84 there through Waterbury and even just outside of Danbury. But we go down to Bridgeport and New Haven, also seeing some steady snow. And then we had that report in southeastern Connecticut where we definitely can see that snow band there just kind of extending. And that actually, as we switch over to the Taunton radar there in Mass, a good bit of more moderate snow there right along the Rhode Island border there. So definitely seeing some heavy snow there. Fortunately, we don't really have that much in the way of outages. We've had some changes. If you were watching us early, we had one or two outages from Ridgefield into portions of Danbury, also Middletown. Those have been corrected, but we take a look, looks like Greenwich, and then we also have, I want to say Guilford, but I might be wrong about that specific town. So it looks like one or two outages for portions of the shore. So we're in great shape right now as far as the outages are concerned. But Steve, as we go through tonight, we're just going to notice those winds just really starting to pick up. So the bulk of those blizzard-like conditions we're not really expecting until about 3 a.m. or so, as everything really, starts to get going for us.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned 3 a.m. because I know we haven't touched on it much, but that's when we have the peak of the coastal flood issues too, Anthony, that we have. So this is for tonight and tomorrow morning. Coastal flood warning for New Haven, Bridgeport, and Stamford. So what that means is that we expect some moderate inundation, or at least moderate flooding during high tide because of the influence of the storm, the really strong storm moving up the eastern seaboard, co-aligning with the high tide in the natural cycle. Coastal flood advisory, this is for a lower impact, minor coastal flooding that would be in New London, Groton, and southeastern Connecticut shorelines. Usually a lot less of the water inundation here in eastern Connecticut. And then I was looking into the Bridgeport numbers, Bridgeport forecast to get to a water level where at least a few streets get inundated with some water. So especially closer to the shoreline, low-lying spots. And that happens about 3 in the morning tonight. So Anthony was mentioning kind of the core of the wind that comes in about 3 in the morning. This high tide cycle tonight is around 2 to 3 a.m. So that's when the worst of the flooding is. Luckily in the middle of the night, hopefully even fewer folks out there. I don't think there's anything we have to do for that necessarily, but that is something that we're watching as well. Now I was just looking at a report from the National Weather Service out of New York. They are on Long Island and they have observed another 2-inch per hour snow rate at their office on Long Island from 8 to 9 p.m. tonight. And they're starting to hear some reports of 6 inches in parts of central and eastern Long Island. So I show you that because that's where our moisture is coming from. So those heavier snow bands are now moving in. So this is the first time that we've had blizzard warnings in much of the state. Most of these areas haven't seen this since about 2017 or 2018. So we're talking 8-9 years in length of time. We did get a blizzard warning for southeastern Connecticut more recently in the early 2020s, but it's been 8-9 years here for many of the counties that we have. It's a whole state. That is impressive. And blizzard warning merely has to do with winds. It's a very wind-driven alert. That's what we have. Now, we have a pretty wide range in our snow forecast, and we are confident that at the end of this storm, there will be a wide range of some folks probably getting closer to 2 feet of snow, and then others maybe on the upper single-digit amount of maybe 8, 9, 10 inches. So we're going to go in here 10 to 20 inches. The more detail to this, closer to 10 probably here in lower elevations of Hartford County, and then closer to 20 inches in the eastern portions of Connecticut and the hill towns that we have across Connecticut. A couple of live looks as we look at Hartford. The snow's getting steadier. We're down to about a mile, a little less than a mile visibility. And then the trees aren't moving that much in Waterbury, which is good. So the winds really aren't kicking yet. But we are seeing the steadiest snow anywhere you see 3/4 to 1/2 mile visibility, which is much of central and southern Connecticut. That's the steadiest of the snow right now. There's a little band right here between Norwich and Groton. There's another one over Waterbury and Hartford. And then there's that snow band. It moved right over Long Island. It kind of dissipated a little bit as it got toward us, but that's where that 2-inch per hour snowfall rate has been observed on Long Island. And yeah, we are in the thick of it here. It looks like there is another steady band. It's kind of blossoming right over that. So Anthony, you're noticing this as we look at this. It's just kind of blossoming over Connecticut, right?
No, it definitely is. And I know we haven't really gotten to the wind part of this yet, Steve, but it's just really interesting to see, just south of us, all of that developing and then moving closer and closer. So you talk about that report that we saw from Long Island, some folks getting close to 6 inches. That's not far away, and it is moving in our direction. I really love looking at the radar. You can just see those bands kind of fanning out across the region. We did get a couple of questions. The potential for power outages for northwestern Connecticut. I know we've been kind of focused a little bit along the shoreline there, but if you're in northwestern Connecticut, we're still expecting, you know, those higher elevations could definitely have some breezy conditions, but gusts 40 to 50 miles per hour. So scattered power outages as a possibility there. I do think that we have a greater risk of outages for the eastern and southern part of Connecticut, especially for folks along the shore, just where we can expect those breezier conditions. Of course, you're always going to have that there along the water, but for eastern Connecticut, you get out toward Windham County there, along the 395 corridor. I think that's where we're going to have the greatest potential there to end up seeing the chance for power outages to continue. But right now, we're in good shape. The strongest gust that we have right now would be coming out of Bridgeport, right now gusting to just about 30 or so miles per hour. But in general, as we move through this evening, we are going to notice those winds start to increase a little bit there. So by roughly midnight, those winds gusting closer to about 30 for places like Bradley Airport. But meanwhile, the shoreline getting closer to about 40. Now, those blizzard conditions likely not going to happen until we get into the early morning hours of Monday. So that is closer to about 3:30 in the morning or so. As we take a live look out there over Windsor Locks, there's Bradley Airport there in the distance, and there's a good bit of snow that is coming down. Of course, we are zoomed in just a little bit there at the airport, but just still goes to show where we have some of those more moderate snow showers that are falling right now. So we take a look at 3 a.m. This is 7 a.m. Monday, where we see winds gusting eastern Connecticut, potentially over 50 miles per hour. Now, the higher terrain of northwestern Connecticut, I don't want to rule you guys out, but it would be for more of those isolated locations there where you can have gusts over 50. But in general, 40 to 50 as you move west of the river. So there you go, places like Litchfield, where it looks pretty calm right now. Some white roads for sure, and looks like there's some crews out there that are trying to clear some of that out of here. But yes, expecting the highest wind potential in eastern areas of the state and for along the shoreline there. But this is going to be interesting to watch in southeastern Connecticut, with a lot of the model data pointing toward wind gusts potentially over 55 miles per hour. Whenever you get winds over 40 or 45 or 50 on a winter type event like this is, where you don't have leaves on the trees, you can still have damage to trees. Now add that snow that could be weighing down some of those branches, and we get that potential to break tree limbs. That falls on power lines, and that's where we get some of those outages there. It stays breezy even going through about 10 a.m. on Monday. So gusts there, they're starting to wind down, but it is still breezy as we move through Monday afternoon. 4 p.m., still gusting anywhere from 35, 45 miles per hour, an isolated spot, maybe still higher than that. So still breezy. Oh, it's still snowing Monday afternoon, but now it's not quite widespread. We're going to be noticing more of a individual banding setup versus, you know, a widespread kind of snow globe there. Moving past that into Monday night, this is 10 p.m. We still have winds gusting anywhere from 25, 35 miles per hour, Steve. So that wind continues for us. And of course, like you mentioned before, when it comes to a blizzard warning, it's not so much about how much snow we have, but it is those conditions, those breezy conditions, creating that low visibility and just, you know, all kinds of problems for the roadways.
It is, yeah. It's always hard to clean up, hard to navigate, hard to see. And you know what? I can't stop thinking about the, Anthony, you'll appreciate this, the American model, the GFS model. This thing had it, and the European model was sending it out to sea, and I don't know if it has to do with the Olympics. I mean, Team USA today is the American model. It's like Americans for the win, I guess, with this, unless you didn't want this to occur here with the live Doppler radar. Hey, I've got some new snow reports coming in. So exciting. And actually, some of them are, you know, pretty impressive already that we're seeing, especially in the southern part of the state. So what we're going to do is overlay the snow reports with kind of the raw radar data. The one that is right here, this blue, takes into account surface observations and temperature. So it changes the color for you. So just know everybody's getting snow, even though we're changing this to the green so we can look at the raw data a little bit more. And I look at this because then we can pinpoint a few of the heavier bands of snow, which is now pushing along I-95, where 9 comes down to meet it here into southeastern Connecticut, west of New London. That's a big snow band. It stretches over to Norwich, Groton, and into Rhode Island. There's a decent band from about Farmington, northwest side here in Bristol, over to Waterbury, and then decent snow down to Bridgeport. So we are starting to get some snow reports. These are coming in from the public measurement. There could be some storm spotters. Anybody out there sending the Weather Service offices their measurements. So we've got one in Branford, 3 inches of snow already, up to 4 inches in Shelton, Connecticut. Highest totals are down to the shoreline at the moment, especially Fairfield County. Easton at 2.5 inches, and then the top spot I found was 5 inches in Wilton, Connecticut in Fairfield County. These are all individual snow reports. There are a ton of them into upstate New York and Long Island. And that's where some reports have already eclipsed 6 inches. So, oh boy, here we go. It's just kind of, if you're reading the novel, we're only in the first part of the book. We still have to get to the best part. I don't know if you want to say the best part, but maybe the most thrilling part, which for us in this snowstorm is probably going to be between about 3 a.m. tonight and noon tomorrow. And then the conclusion of this whole story is tomorrow afternoon when that winds down. Now, we are getting some bands of snow pushing through. There are some lulls here and there, but for the most part, what we are seeing over the next couple of hours is for the snow probably to get steadier across Connecticut by and large, because what's coming up, we call this upstream from us, is on the order of 1 inch plus per hour snowfall rate, so quite a bit. So hour by hour tonight, you can see that we're kind of locked and loaded here for snow, heavy at times with strong winds. Tomorrow morning is kind of the worst of it, to be honest, in terms of the strong winds, because the center of the low is right here. It's right down here. It's almost hard with the deep blue to see the outlines of Connecticut. Connecticut's right here, Long Island's here, southeast Mass there. And the low is, at this point, still getting closer to us. And it gets closest to us, again, between about 3 a.m. and noon tomorrow, and that's when the winds are strongest. The snow showers wind down tomorrow afternoon, but the wind stays kind of strong all the way through sunset tomorrow. Tuesday, the sun comes back out. It's a chilly sun, but Anthony, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some of the residual impacts into Tuesday, too, with this, because it's a big storm. Yeah. And with the blowing and drifting snow. So I would probably plan on some alterations to Tuesday's schedule too.
I would imagine so, Steve. You know, you talk about just the amount of snow that we're getting, kind of comparable to what we saw with the last storm. And we had schools that were closed for 2 days, both Monday, Tuesday. They were closed. You throw into the mix the potential for power outages as well. And if you were on your phone earlier today, you probably got a text from Eversource saying that this is something that they might be dealing with for several days. So we'll have to see as far as, how strong those winds end up getting and then the residual power outages from that. But just going back to some of the snow bands that we're seeing across Connecticut and just south of us, I just find this really interesting when you look at radar and you see everything, like Steve has been mentioning, working its way from the south to the north, but it almost has a little bit of, I would say, a little bit of convergence, or just kind of blossoming a little bit more. Mainly 2 snow bands that kind of catch my eye. We paused this at the latest frame, and here you go, that band that stretches right from coastal Connecticut to the north shore there of Long Island. That band there, as it kind of pinwheels its way into parts of the state there. So that's what we'll keep an eye on. Let's go back to that. I want to continue talking about radar a little bit more here. Let's see, there it is. So this will pinwheel into the Connecticut shoreline. So places, Madison toward Clinton. I think Clinton's just about to see some of that as well. We drag this over a little bit more, and you can see through sections of New Haven out toward Branford, that potential for that band to work its way in. That causes a just drop in visibility. And Ryan, if you're able to, if you can communicate this out for folks, if we can try to get on one of the I-95 cameras, maybe around Clinton, out toward Old Saybrook, if we still have some of those cameras that we could pop up. All right, they're going to work on that for me, because this probably coming down at a really good clip right now, just around the old Saybrook area, if not just maybe further off to the west there. The other snow band, it's now kind of getting right toward the beam block there in southwestern Connecticut, but down toward Bridgeport and then going into sections of southwestern Connecticut. Seeing that band actually stretches essentially from Easton down towards Stamford, and it's snowing really good in Stamford right now, but that band actually continues out of Connecticut. We get down into sections of upstate New York, but this goes all the way down through Manhattan. And you can just see very heavy snow ongoing in Manhattan. If we had the Rockefeller Center camera of New York City, it would probably show a lot of that snow coming down right now. But let's go back home here in Connecticut where, yeah, that heaviest snow band that we're seeing right now is along the shoreline there from Groton, New London, stretching down past Route 9. Another one doesn't look to be as strong, but it's probably snowing still pretty good. Let's go to north of Waterbury here, right along Route 8. So Waterbury, Watertown, Plymouth, also seeing some more of that steady snow. And even just north of Bristol, you travel north of Bristol, Route 69, that continues maybe toward Burlington, maybe just outside of Burlington, between Burlington, Farmington there. The opposite side, you keep on Route 6 down past Watertown, toward Woodbury, also some more of that heavier band, and maybe sections of Southbury, also seeing some more moderate snow showers, currently at least. Let's zoom out. There we go. Let's try to zoom this out a little bit more. We'll just do this. So there you go. That's what we're seeing right now as far as those snow bands are concerned. This will show your power outages, really not talking about anything at the moment, which is fantastic news. But what we'll see as we move through tonight as far as snow showers go, so those waves of heavy bands, that continues for us. And you can see that here a little bit with those darker shading of blue and then kind of fading in with some lighter shades. You can see that a little bit easier. But watch as we move past midnight. And you know, Steve, I think we just may have gotten a new, I don't know if we just got a new model run here, but you can definitely still see some heavier snow continuing all the way through roughly 10 a.m. or so. So 10 to 20 inches of snow across the state. This is heavy, wet snow by the time all of this is said and done. And that will be, it'll be really fun to clean up if you do it all at once. And if you're like me and the snowblower is on the fritz, that's going to be pretty fun to shovel later on, Steve.
I don't know what kind of fun times you're having, Mr. Anthony.
You know, I can't do yard work right now. I can't cut the grass or anything, so I guess shoveling snow is as close I'm getting to that.
That's true. You're outside. Mr. Anthony is Mr. Yard. I mean, he put so much care into his yard last fall when it was still warm outside that I'm excited to see how it looks this spring.
I'm worried about kind of the cold damage, if you will, the frost damage to some of the grass a little bit there. Getting off topic, but you know, looking ahead, we're looking ahead to spring. And to go off topic really quickly too, Steve. So I took a picture today. I'll share this later on, but some of the flowers, some of the buds there are trying to stick through the ground a little bit. I noticed it in some of the beds out there today, close to the house where the snow kind of melted away. And there's a few of them that are trying to creep out of the ground a little bit. I'm just like, hold on a minute. We're getting more snow. Don't get too excited just yet. They'll be fine, but signs of spring. We're getting there.
It will. I know. It's a tough storm at the end of the season. Yeah, because we're kind of beaten down by now. We've had 2 other big storms, so another one. But next Sunday's March 1st. 2 Sundays from now, our sunsets are almost 7 o'clock. We fast forward.
Oh, so sounds so good.
There's some things, little victories along the way.
Little by little.
Little by little. So we're getting some new pictures in. This is from Bradley International Airport, I think. Yes, it is. It's trying to look at the terminal, which is just very snowy. Also, you'll notice here in Waterbury, we've been looking at this camera throughout the past couple of hours, and the trees weren't moving much, but now they're starting to dance a little bit. So here we go. We're starting to get into kind of more of the main course of this weather system, and you'll notice just the lens is very wet. That usually is an indicator that this is a wetter, stickier snow that we are finding that is falling from the sky. Visibility is now down to a ½ mile in Willimantic. We've improved to a mile in Groton and Waterbury at a mile, ½ mile in New Haven. It's going to be back and forth a mile or less generally for the rest of the night tonight, but as low as a ½ mile under some of the thickest of the bands. There's live looking Hartford downtown, it's the Founders Bridge, and then I-91, so the traffic going from right to left is going southbound. And Looks like there's moving okay. Looks like the cars are going okay, but travel's not really advised tonight. We did get a question if this is going to be similar to the blizzard of 2013, and this one does not seem to be up to the amount of snow, at least, as that snowstorm produced. I think a lot of us are. I remember the last storm that we had 12 to 18 inches predicted in much of the state in late January. And I think a lot of us ended up getting in that range, maybe even a few 20-inch amounts. I think this go around we will be closer to about the 1 foot, about the 12-inch mark, as opposed to 18. But, you know, a couple of these bands can really throw a wrench in the forecast because if they set up, they can really produce some heavy snow. But as we see it right now, we are getting some of the heaviest snow bands that are now moving into the shoreline here into southeastern Connecticut, and a few more of these that are now across the moving out of the Farmington Valley now into the Litchfield Hills. So they're really starting to get more and more intense, and I think that's really going to be the case as we go deeper through tonight. Snow reports coming in. We've got Branford at 3 inches, 4 inches in Shelton, 2.5 inches here in Easton. And then Wilton's got 5 inches. So the range is 2.5 to 5 inches in southern Connecticut. And then probably northern Connecticut, it's anywhere from maybe a ½ inch to maybe an inch or inch and a half. But more and more of this snow is coming in. This is just as green as we were showing it for the sake of looking at the raw data. So this is, Anthony was right, this is the latest weather model that just came in. So we'll see how it looks. It's got a band of heavy snow right there over northwest Connecticut moving in, and then more and more of the bands of snow that pretty much just fill in over the state through 6:30. So this picture looks no different from the previous weather model at 6:30 in the morning at sunrise tomorrow, which is very heavy snowfall and strong winds. And then noon, still snowing, and after that, 5 p.m., the snow finally starting to wind down, and then the sunshine coming back out here on Tuesday. Now, I don't want to throw salt in the wound here, kind of hit you while you're down, but there is another chance of some snow on Wednesday. This is what that looks like, with some snow showers with an Alberta clipper system that pushes in.
Not as strong as this one.
Not as strong. That looks to be somewhere in our neighborhood of a coating to 2 inches there with that snow amount. So kind of final conclusions here as we wrap up, Anthony. You know, thoughts on the storm so far? Do you think it's unfolding the way we predicted so far?
No, I think it's going to plan. We still haven't seen those winds that are really, you know, expected to get pretty breezy. I think that's going to be the most impactful aside from the snow, of course. So that's on track for us. We've been talking about those snow bands kind of moving in. A quick final question here for Torrington. Any thoughts on final snowfall amounts that part of the state? Still going 10 to 20 inches there. This is my take on it. We'll have to see how those snow bands kind of develop throughout the rest of the night.
I think Torrington's in around 12 to 13 inches, I would think. That's what my gut says for Torrington, based on elevation, too. And as a friendly reminder, our storm coverage is just kind of getting started, right?
It is. This is part 1. We got more coming up tonight at 11, and then Ryan and Bob are in starting at 4 a.m.
If Ryan Hanrahan and Bob Maxson are in the same room covering weather together, you know it's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
That's
big
a big deal.
storm on the way.
That's tomorrow morning, too.
Yeah.
Which we'll do on all our platforms. We're going to hit it up on YouTube, on social media, on the NBC Connecticut app.
You can get us everywhere.
Yeah,
no excuses not to be informed. We got you covered.
What I like is the push alerts. You got the push alerts right to the phone, so there's some, ask your questions. We're doing a live stream right now.
Yeah.
Or when the snow is expected to get heavier. I learned about the blizzard warning, came right through in the app today.
There you go. And if we missed your questions, if we missed it in the whole stream of things, you can always shoot us messages on our own pages. You can follow both Steve and I on our respective social media pages. And of course, make sure you follow NBC Connecticut as well.
I think final closing is it's going to be a windy storm. I think a lot of us will get snow drifts and wind. So if you have to venture out, please be safe. But it's recommended just to stay home, stay off the roads, and stay safe.
Take the snow day. We love the snow day there. And just one more thing, too, the potential for power outages, especially if you're in one of those more wooded areas. If you're used to losing power, you might be seeing that as well.
All right, so we'll sign off here from all of us at NBC Connecticut. We'll have updates throughout the storm. Please stay safe. From Anthony, myself, the whole team, have a great night.